Go. Whoa. So, ladies and gentlemen, the first emergency episode that we have here on Ahead of the Chains. Absolute perfect timing. Perfect timing. We were both home. Neither of us was inebriated. It was great. I'm so glad that this trade happened at such an opportunistic time. I was just telling him if this happened on like a Monday morning when I was at work all day, I would have been pissed. But enough about this stupid intro. I mean, Maxx Crosby and 2 first rounders. This is a huge, huge trade. Of all the teams that I thought would trade for Maxx Crosby, I starred, circled, and underlined the Chicago Bears. I thought they were going to be the team, but it's the Baltimore Ravens giving up pick 14 as well as next year's first. Just your first thoughts. I mean, I think we're all kind of in shock right now. It's kind of hard for me to formulate sentences, but I'm going to pass the baton to you. Like, what was your first thought when you saw this blockbuster trade?
Well, I mean, we knew Crosby was on the market, but we knew they were only going to trade him away for the right price.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been very stubborn on that. Two first rounders.
Yes.
We want
Yes.
2 first rounders. And the Ravens needed a player like this. A lot of teams needed a player like Maxx Crosby. And since the trade happened, it has been very difficult to look away from the phone just
Yeah, it
because of the
has.
amount of reports
It has.
of this team was interested. This team was interesting. The Cowboys offered a first and a second. They wouldn't quite go to a first and another first. The Jaguars apparently pursued very heavily, but the Travis Hunter trade up led to them not really having the capital to go ahead and make a move like this.
Yeah.
But the Ravens had the capital, and more than anything, they have the aggressiveness. And I guess when you really ask about my first thought, this is right in character for them as an organization. This is what they're about. They are the opposite of their division rival Pittsburgh Steelers in the sense of when there's an opportunity to get better and be aggressive and potentially risk some major, major consequences, they're willing to do that because they want to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They aren't settling for mediocrity. They're going to do everything in their power to go ahead and take that next step and join, the Rams and the Seahawks as the top of the top, the creme de la creme. Even with a first-year head coach, get him a tool like Maxx Crosby. This is a team that had just 30 sacks last year.
Yeah.
That's the least the Ravens had as a football team in 15 years.
Wow.
The team leader had 4.5 sacks.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Tell me, do you think Maxx Crosby is getting 4.5 sacks?
I would say he's
feel
probably
pretty
getting 4.5
confident.
sacks when they play Pittsburgh. That'd be my answer. That's probably no. And I think too, like, look, Jesse Minter, you're right. First year coach. He was just in Los Angeles. He saw Maxx Crosby twice a year. He's a defensive guy. Going out and getting a guy like Maxx Crosby is great. One of my first thoughts about this trade was the winner of the Maxx Crosby sweepstakes was ultimately Baltimore. And I was thinking, like, why Baltimore? Well, they had the 14th pick, and I think that mattered. The other teams that we talked about, like the Bears, they had the 25th pick in the draft. Of course, the one year the Bears are good, it actually bites them in the ass, right? But the Bears did have a great year. The Ravens did not. And so they took advantage of their rare premium draft position at pick 14 to go up and get a guy like Maxx Crosby, who, like we said, is a game changer. Point blank period. The A-tier pass rush, one of the A-tier pass rushers in the NFL. We talked a few episodes ago about how the Maxx Crosby trade rumors, there was some smoke and there was some fire because his cap hit numbers are not crazy. Like this, you're not trading for a guy with a $50 million cap hit every year. It's in the 30s, right? So for this to happen, the Raiders obviously had to get premium capital back. And just from the rumors and the everything we had heard the past few days, I had a strong feeling that Maxx Crosby was going to get traded. It was going to come on the horizon. Again, with all the shuffling and the maneuvering that the Bears were doing, I thought, okay, they traded DJ Moore, they cut Tremaine Edmonds, all this and that, but it ended up being the Ravens. I feel like in the reports you heard a lot about the Cowboys, like you said. You heard about the Bears, the Jaguars. I also heard the Eagles were interested, and they were potentially willing to give up Jalen Carter. Like that just tells you the price that Maxx Crosby was going to fetch. One of the rumors I didn't buy, however, was the fact that the Raiders are like they're torn on if they want to trade Maxx Crosby or not. They're going to trade Maxx Crosby. I think we all knew that, right?
I think because of the return being what it was.
Absolutely, and they were going to get. I could have told you they were going to get 2 firsts. Now I would have thought it would have been pick 25 and pick 27 next year from Chicago or something like that. The Ravens having the 14th pick, I'm telling you, that first half of the first round was the difference. 100% was the difference. They were waiting for a team like that to offer them the king's ransom.
I completely agree.
This kind of really we talked about in our Maxx Crosby episode last week how does the dichotomy of the AFC or NFC change depending on where Maxx Crosby goes? Are the Ravens the AFC favorites right now? I mean, they kind of have to be.
Oh, how could you say they're
You,
not?
you kind of have to be.
What team do
Yeah,
you look at and say, yeah, they could beat out the Ravens?
yeah,
Right? The Patriots made it last year. Do we think that the Patriots? Yeah, they're good, but they were ahead of. They had a couple balls bounce their way. The
yeah,
Texans' offense is still very concerning.
yes.
While you do really like that defense, I still like Denver, but they don't have what Baltimore has right now, and the
No,
Bills don't scare them with DJ Moore as their wide receiver one.
no.
I'll
I'm
be entirely honest.
and like you said, Kansas City is probably still licking their wounds a little bit this year.
Oh yeah,
I think they took a portrait view of the AFC. They investigated the landscape of the AFC and they said we got to strike now. If we're gonna get a Super Bowl in the Lamar Jackson era, we got to go while the Chiefs are down, while the Bills are having cap. And drama with their head coach. The Patriots we think are going to regress this year. The AFC is up for grabs, and we're going to go take it. And trading 2 first-round picks for a guy like Maxx Crosby, if that doesn't push you over the edge, I don't know what does. I really don't know what does. The other biggest, trade like this we talked about a while ago was Khalil Mack, right? But the Bears at that point were not in the position that the Ravens are in right now. They don't have an MVP quarterback. They don't have a Hall of Fame running back. They don't have all this great talent that the Ravens have in their back seven of their defense. And the departure of John Harbaugh, you could say is a huge negative if you're a John Harbaugh believer. But I tend to think that Jesse Minter is going to come in and do a great job. Like I think their defense is going to be phenomenal. I think that Declan Doyle, obviously he's a big question mark. He's never called plays, but this Baltimore Ravens team, I think clearly is the favorite in the AFC right now. I think that they should and will be playing in February for the Super Bowl.
Well, you mentioned Jesse Minter. Let's talk a little bit about that side of this, right?
Yeah.
Because he's a defensive guy. Maxx Crosby, a tremendous defensive piece. People talk so much about that scheme, right? All the X's and O's and how they disguise coverages and send these unique blitz packages at you. And they have a lot of unique skill sets there. Roquan Smith is this very nice pass coverage linebacker who you could trust on even some receivers, right? He is that caliber of athlete. And then you have Kyle Hamilton, who could literally play anywhere on the football field. Nnamdi Madubuike is a very capable defensive tackle that can kind of go sideline to sideline. Yes. And then you have Maxx Crosby there now, who I think has a very concrete role. I'm sorry, maybe I'm being underwhelming here. And this isn't a bad thing, but I think in a defense where it's 10 very malleable pieces, I think he's that 11th piece that's always just going to be a hand in the dirt defensive lineman that you have defending the run at an elite level and getting to the quarterback. And that is going to be his job. You're not going to have him drop back into coverage.
No,
you're not going to have him. I do think he can do a little bit of stunting stuff. I definitely do, but I think you take a little bit away from his game if you try and have him do that, except on third downs and stuff like that. Tell me, do you look at it differently? Do you think he adds a little bit more schematically than I'm talking about?
Football is a very complicated game, and we can spin our wheels all day. It's Maxx Crosby. You want him with his hand in the dirt, playing the run and rushing the quarterback. It's that simple. It's that simple. I don't think that there's really more to it. Jesse Minter, as we know, is a great schematic mind, one of the up and coming young defensive minds in the NFL. This one's easy. It's the easiest player he's ever going to have to coach. Hey, Maxx Crosby, go be Maxx Crosby. That's all you have to say. I want to address a couple of things in the chat right now. Thank you guys for joining. One is somebody's talking about Maxx Crosby's bad knee. I will give my take on that. I think that that's more the Raiders trying to preserve him for a trade than it was. Remember they held him out and he stormed out of the building and everything like that. That was the greatest tank job we've ever seen. Shout out Pete Carroll. The other thing is by releasing Geno Smith today and trading Maxx Crosby, Raiders freed up $48 million in cap space in just a few hours. I want to start by saying I don't know if you saw the Twitter spat that Geno Smith and Wendy's, the fast food chain Wendy's got beef with each other apparently, which is just hilarious. But we're not talking about Geno Smith today. We're talking about Maxx Crosby. But the Raiders, obviously, on their end, freeing up $48 million. I want to switch actually to the Raiders for just 1 second because from their perspective, you got a new head coach coming in, Clint Kubiak. You have the number 1 overall pick. You're going to take Fernando Mendoza, who's going to be hopefully your franchise quarterback. Now you equip yourself also with the 14th overall pick and another first-round pick next year, which likely won't be as high as the 14th overall pick. From the Raiders' perspective, do you think this was the right move, trading, a franchise cornerstone? He's been amazing since his first game ever as a Raider. Do you think that this was the right move, or do you think they should have tried to work out something longer term, with Maxx Crosby to stay in Las Vegas?
I think you can make an argument that keeping a guy like Crosby around definitely helps your football team. It definitely does, in the sense of having a guy that shows the Raiders are a team that you want to be with long term,
Hmm.
and a guy that could vouch about what the team used to be like 5 years ago.
Right.
But when you're offered 2 first-round picks,
I think the same
one of them
thing.
being a 14th,
I think the same thing.
it's very possible. I think it's very reasonable to react to that and say, yeah, you're a player who is unbelievable. Unbelievable football player, Maxx Crosby. But what you're doing on the field, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but we're not really winning games right now either
Yeah,
way.
yeah. It's not.
So I would rather have the picks in terms of just trying to win games. From a culture perspective, I think that's what Maxx Crosby provides you a little bit more of. But he was
Yeah,
also in cahoots with the team right
yeah.
now because of that tanking situation that you're talking about, with them forcing him out to the sideline. He was very angry about that. So now you have a player that doesn't really want to be there anymore. So now, is there even that culture benefit? The benefit of him being a great player, I don't think is really worth keeping around. I think it's almost a no-brainer. When you're offered 2 first-round picks, you give up a guy, despite how talented and how valuable he is.
Yeah, there are very few players in the history of the league that are worth 2 first round picks to get for. And when you have a guy like that and you're not in a contention window like the Raiders are, like, hey, maybe Clint Kubiak is awesome. He's, Ben Johnson 2.0, and maybe Fernando Mendoza is your franchise quarterback. That's great. You're not doing anything in 2027 or 2026, excuse me. 2027 is your first, like, hey, maybe we'll be good, but this year's not the year to be good. I think to acquire more draft capital, to acquire more pieces to build for, it was absolutely the right thing to do. I mean, you look at Maxx Crosby, he's going to be 30 at the start of the 2027 season. I talked about his cap hit, by the way. I wanted to correct myself because I looked up his numbers. His cap hit for the next 4 years, 30 million, 29 million, 27 million, 28 million. So if you're Baltimore, you're also,
Love it.
not really putting yourself in a bad financial spot
Hey,
as well.
with
And
TJ Watt getting paid 40 million, I
mhm,
love
yeah,
paying
yeah.
Maxx Crosby 29 million.
Yeah, the last 2 years of his deal, he'll be 31 and 32, and you're like, oh, why are we paying a pass rusher that much? He'll only account for 7.7 and 7.5% of your cap for
And let's
Maxx
be honest.
Crosby. For
Do
Maxx
you think
Crosby.
Crosby's going to be the type of guy who falls off at 30?
Dude, I don't think so. I think this is a guy who, he's been very vocal about the fact that he takes care of his body. He's
Yep.
very in tune with his mental health. Like, this seems to be like a guy who's going to have a very prolonged career. He's not an unrestricted free agent until 2030. I mean, this is not a rental for Baltimore. He's going to be a Raven for a long time. I would imagine beyond. He's going to get this will be his third or fourth contract. I would imagine he's going to get another somewhat big deal after this one. But we're talking about 2030, so that's a bridge a little too far at this point. But again, going back to the Raiders, absolutely was the right deal. They had to make this move. This is how bad teams get better. When the Detroit Lions traded away Matthew Stafford for 2 first-round picks, people said, oh my God, how could you trade away Matthew Stafford? He's been your franchise cornerstone. He's a guy you took. He's been Mr. Lion his whole career. Well, they used those 2 first-round picks to rebuild their entire roster. And guess what? The Lions are a really good team now. Now, the Rams did win the Super Bowl, in fairness. Great trade for both sides, all things considered. But getting that capital, having the self-awareness, I think a lot of teams lack self-awareness. And that's where I will applaud the Raiders for saying, okay, we're not great. We're not where we want to be. Let's just absolutely not dump them, but let's trade them. Let's retool, accumulate all these assets. That's what good organizations do. And I do not think the Raiders have proven to be a good organization. So
But they
maybe
could start something new.
they,
Now it's the Kubiak era, man.
it's a New Year's resolution. It started in March. Mine ended by March, going to the gym every day. But that's besides the point, man. Like, I think I think there's also a little influence from the GOAT, possibly a little Tom Brady action going
Yeah,
on.
maybe.
I heard I don't know if you heard the weird rumor where apparently Maxx Crosby had beef with Alex Guerrero, who was Brady's like TB12 trainer guy. Like, stuff was just getting weird in Vegas. That's why I never thought for a second that Maxx Crosby was going to be an Oakland Raider next year. Wow, Oakland Raider. Show my age. I'm Unk status. Yeah, Las Vegas Raider next year. The compensation is 2 first-round picks. Adam Schefter actually had a tweet that I really liked, and I was thinking about this in anticipation of the Maxx Crosby trade. I'm going to read you a list of every NFL player that has ever been traded for 2 or more first-round picks. So we got Maxx Crosby as of about 30 minutes ago, Sauce Gardner, Micah Parsons, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Laramie Tunsil, kind of forgot about that one, Jamal Adams, Khalil Mack, Jalen Ramsey, Jay Cutler, Ricky Williams, Keyshawn Johnson, Jeff George, for you ball knowers out there, Eric Dickerson, and Herschel Walker. Some Hall of Famers, some just instantly flamed out.
Deshaun Watson's not on that list.
Yeah,
Either.
Deshaun Watson's on that. We talked about that. Deshaun Watson's not on that list. Schefter was probably just typing as fast as human fingers could
Maybe
possibly
he
go.
just didn't. Maybe he wanted to exclude him for.
Just give Cleveland a little bit of a break. Their division rival just got Maxx Crosby. He's like, man,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna just dump on him. But there's kind of a mixed bag on the ROI of trading 2 first-round picks for a guy. You get guys like Matthew Stafford, and you get guys who help you win a Super Bowl the next year. And then there's some mixed bags. Like there's Jay Cutler. Like would the Bears go back?
Here's my thing, though. Here's my thing. Look at the teams that the good players on that list went to, and look at the competency of those organizations versus the teams that the bad players on that list went, and then think about the competency of those organizations, right? You talked about Khalil Mack, right? Chicago Bears, I mean, they've been doing this for a very long time. And they know a thing or two about how to run a football team.
Yeah.
But then you think about like Ricky Williams. He got traded to Miami.
Yeah.
I mean, the Miami Dolphins, at one point, in the 70s, in the 80s, man.
Yeah, post
Don
Shula.
That's
post Don
name.
Shula, they've just been struggling. Yeah.
No, exactly. But that's kind of what I mean. You look at a few of those kind of names. I just want to look back at the list because there's a few other guys there. A lot of those trades recent too.
Yeah. And I think I was going to say something about that too, because I think in the last 10 to 15 years, because there's probably half the guys on that list are from the last 10-ish years.
Mm-hmm.
I think GMs are becoming so much more aggressive. Not only that, but I think they're starting to devalue the first-round picks now, because regardless of where you're picking the draft, you could pick first, you could pick 255th. They're all lottery tickets, right? Some of them have, pretty much better odds, like if you're picking a Caleb Williams, right? But they're all lottery tickets. All of them can flame out. All of them could never contribute meaningfully for you, et cetera, et cetera. GMs are starting to realize that, and I think Les Snead was the guy who really pushed that to the forefront where, he said, F them picks, right? He basically said, I would rather have proven star players who are more expensive. I know they're good. I know they're going to help me, and I know that we have a better chance to win the Super Bowl in the immediate future versus taking a guy, having to develop him, having to, integrate him with your system, all of these things. He wants the proven asset more than he wants the lottery ticket. And I think a lot of GMs are following suit with that. The Ravens, clearly had, done some scouting on the 14th pick, and they said, we would rather give up this year's first and next year's first for Maxx Crosby. And I don't think any of us are blaming them right now. I don't think anybody's saying this is a terrible trade for Baltimore. Blah, blah. I mean, I like it from both ends. I really do.
No, but I think there's some truth to what you're saying. But I want to look at it in a little bit of a different way. I think part of it is the salary cap and the type of money these players are asking for and how much more players are beginning to cost. And just occasionally players being way more vocal about wanting out of a team.
Yeah.
And that's led to more guys getting traded from team to team.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big part of why we're seeing Sauce Gardner get traded for 2 first-rounders. Star players didn't used to get traded a lot. No. Now it happens because players will be vocal when they want to be traded.
Yeah.
That's why. And the salary cap, of course, plays a role in that exact thing. But I think the big thing to keep in mind with all this, we talked about it from the Ravens' perspective and how great that is. We talked about it a little bit from the Raiders' perspective. But if you're a Raiders fan and you feel really upset about Maxx Crosby, I want you to look at the bottom name of that list that you just said, Herschel Walker.
Yeah.
He got traded from Minnesota, and he was a stud running back with the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
He got traded to Minnesota
Right.
from Dallas, Dallas got the picks they needed to start a dynasty in the early 90s.
Took
Like,
Emmitt Smith. Ever heard of him?
yeah, Troy Aikman, the number 1 overall pick. I mean, those guys, Michael Irvin, like those guys don't become Dallas Cowboys, or at least not all 3 of them. They don't all join
Yeah.
that team, and they don't have that legendary team of the early 90s that won those Super Bowls,
Mm-hmm.
if not for trading away Herschel Walker.
Speaking of
So,
winning
yeah,
Super
it's
Yeah.
hard to let a guy like Maxx Crosby go, but there
Yeah.
are benefits to that.
I'll say this too. You want to talk about winning a Super Bowl? The team that just won the Super Bowl did it because of trading a guy for multiple first-round picks. I mean, ever
Absolutely.
heard Devin Witherspoon, Boye Mafe? Like, these are great contributing players to the team that they got from the Russell Wilson trade. So,
Yep.
I mean, I'll never forget, dude. I was at Planet Fitness. I fell to my knees and wept when they traded Russell Wilson. I was devastated. He's been my favorite player. I love that guy. And now we look back, 4 or 5 years later, and I'm like, that was the huge move that John Schneider had to make that made that 2025 Super Bowl team. They don't win the Super Bowl without the Russell Wilson trade. Absolutely not. Russell Wilson gets to Denver, absolutely falls off a cliff. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen to Maxx Crosby, but my point is that the Seahawks were able to offload Russell Wilson, accumulate a king's ransom, and little by little build their team in the image of what eventually became Mike McDonald. So
But then you look at the other side for the Ravens, if you want an example of being optimistic about that. Matthew Stafford won a Super Bowl with the Rams
Exactly.
the year he got traded.
Exactly.
And of course that's a quarterback, but I mean, we've seen like Laramie Tunsil was a key player for the Houston Texans.
Yep.
For a period of time. He was a great offensive lineman for them.
I'll even say Khalil Mack was great. Yeah. I mean, the Bears had Trubisky, so they were only going to go so far with that. But Khalil Mack, I mean, if I just showed you what Khalil Mack did as a Bear and I showed you his numbers and I showed you his tape, the Bears would make that trade 10 times out of 10, no questions asked. You know what I mean?
Dickerson, if you want to go give a throwback.
Yep,
that's one. I mean, Eric Dickerson was tremendous with the Colts and the Rams.
Yeah, he was.
Still, that's the point.
Yep.
I mean, that's what this is.
We're forgetting another name. Jalen Ramsey. You think the Rams wouldn't trade 2 first-rounders for Jalen Ramsey if you could wind the clock back to that day? No, he helped them win the Super Bowl. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's what this is. This is a transaction.
Yep.
And both of these teams, in an ideal world, assuming that the Raiders know the right thing to do and assuming Maxx Crosby doesn't completely butcher this, both teams should benefit from this move. My thing, and of course my mind's cynical, so I'm thinking a little bit ahead.
Yeah, you are.
14th overall pick. We know where the Raiders are going with the first pick. Where are the Raiders going with the number 14?
They're going receiver.
Imagine they go BPA.
I think they go receiver. I think Mekhi Lemon's a Raider.
Oh, that'd be fun. I love Mekhi Lemon. Let me say, I'm a big fan of Mekhi Lemon in his film.
There's an argument that he goes 13 to the Rams, which I think would be a little rich for the Rams, especially now that they only have 1 first-round pick. But I do think that if he is at 14, the Raiders, they would be like licking their chops. They would be licking their chops.
How about Mansour Delane? How do we feel about that?
Yeah, I'm not against that. I'm not against that. I don't disagree that they could go BPA. As long as it's not Sadiq, like that would be the most Raiders pick I think they ever could do. But BPA for a team that has we're just running 13. We're gonna outdo Sean McVay in the 13 personnel department. We're gonna run 13 personnel until you cry. I think that BPA, with the exception of Sadiq, and this is a team that has a lot of holes. I mean, who knows? Ruben Bain could fall to 14. Would you take Ruben Bain with pick 14? Probably. I would probably.
That'd be cool.
So they put themselves in a position now where franchise quarterback at 1, again, ideally, and then BPA at pick 14. You're going to get a pass rusher. You can get a receiver. You can get a corner. I mean, these are players, and who knows? Maybe one of the upper echelon guys. Maybe Caleb Downs is there at 14. I kind of doubt it. Like that would be insane.
Think this is the year that you want to be between picks 10 and 15.
Yes.
Because it really does feel like there's going to be like 3 names that are top 10 talents, but there's just
and
10 other guys that are top 10 talent caliber names.
Yep. And a lot of scouts like, Daniel Jeremiah, who obviously does great work, he basically has said, hey, if you're in the back 10 picks of the first round, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks the first round, that's a second round talent you're getting, because this draft class is really the sweet spot, like you said, is the first 10, 11, 12 guys. And then there's like a gap where it's a bunch of second round talent. But if you have multiple seconds, you're getting a guy who's a good second round player. But there's not a lot of high end first round guys in this draft. At 14, they could get one of those guys. And at 1, obviously, they're getting Fernando Mendoza. But this isn't a draft where you want, pick 25, which is why I don't think the Bears had a fighter's chance now in retrospective, because the Raiders were like, dude, that's basically like pick 40 in a normal draft, right? They did their homework, they did their research. John Spytek has a good understanding of the draft and the talent and everything like that. So pick 14, like I said, really changes the equation, not because it's 11 picks higher, but also because the talent disparity as you get into the later half of the first is quite challenging. I want to bring up another point that I think is interesting, and we're obligated to talk about this team because every sports show in America has to talk about them. The Golf Channel has to talk about this team. The Dallas Cowboys, they were really kind of in on the Maxx Crosby sweepstakes. It sounded like them, like I said, the Bears, the Eagles. You talk about the Jaguars, and it wasn't able to happen. And I find it so interesting that Micah Parsons a year ago was traded for 2 first-round picks. It's closer to the season. It was like August, but an off season ago was traded for 2 first-round picks, and they were willing, it sounds like, to go up to a first and a second-round pick. Again, they're kind of in the spot with the Ravens where they have a premium pick because they didn't make the playoffs last year. So the fact that they weren't able to go with 2 firsts, I think, is telling. I don't necessarily. It's hard for me because, would you swap Micah Parsons for Maxx Crosby? I think Crosby's a better player, but Micah Parsons is younger. I don't know. Obviously,
Crosby's on a way more team-friendly deal.
that is true. That is true. So I think that there's some good math there, but clearly they weren't willing to give up as much for Maxx Crosby as they got for Micah Parsons, but they also traded for Quinn Williams. So they kind of don't know if they want to sell or compete. I don't really know what's going on in Dallas, but I think it's interesting that they weren't willing to go to that 2 first-round pick threshold that clearly the Raiders had their eyes on. But yeah, I think teams like Dallas.
It's an ego thing a little bit.
Yeah, could
if
be.
I'm being entirely honest, I think a lot of it is I don't want to pretty much say to everyone I regret the Micah Parsons deal, and that's exactly what he would be doing.
I agree.
It's Jerry Jones. That's the thing. When you talk about the Cowboys, you have to talk about them in a completely different light.
Yeah.
It can't be about the on-field product.
Yep.
It's about
it's the TV show.
Winning comes third.
Yep.
Second is the money, which the money comes from the drama. So money/drama.
Yep.
And then 1, and most important, Jerry Jones'
ego. Yep, absolutely.
Yes. And that right there would go against thing number 1, priority number 1 of the Dallas Cowboys.
Absolutely. No, it's crazy. Again, I did not have the Ravens as my team on the radar for Maxx Crosby. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have thought, hey, they have a premium pick that would be more enticing for the Raiders. I didn't think that Eric DeCosta would be this aggressive. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but their motto basically, the Raven way, has been, we're going to draft really well, we're going to develop guys, we're going to keep our guys in-house. Another good thing I want to mention for the Ravens, and this is related news, the Bears today traded for Garrett Bradbury. They're probably out of the Tyler Linderbaum sweepstakes now. They could potentially bring back Tyler Linderbaum and have landed Maxx Crosby. That would be a hell of a weekend in Baltimore. They could. They can. Anyways,
I have my doubts. That would be whoo.
Yeah, that
can happen.
That would be Eric DeCosta with the smoking gun, putting it back in the holster.
Yeah,
but
Linderbaum's about to make so much.
Yeah, he's gonna make, as Brett Coleman said, he's about to make the GDP of a small nation, and I agree. But I didn't think that this was really a very Ravensy move. I didn't think that they were going to be this hyper aggressive. Again, their model has been draft, develop, extend the guys in-house. We see people that are Ravens, that are good Ravens, be Ravens for a long time, right? They'll also, in the case of a Roquan Smith or a couple of these other guys, trade for a guy who's undervalued, get a really, really good linebacker. But trading 2 first-rounders for a superstar wasn't really on my bingo card. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't think that they had it in them, but I am pleasantly surprised. So I have a huge Baltimore Ravens friend who I texted right after it happened, and his phone was on D&D. I imagine he was getting 10,000 text messages. So Makana, I'm not butthurt at you, man. It's all right. No worries. Call me tonight. But we have a fan in the chat saying goodbye, good riddance to drama queen Max. One trick pony. I am gonna guess you're a Raiders fan, my friend, and I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry.
Well,
I've been
no,
there.
but I don't think it's something you got to be overly upset about because
Yeah.
again, this is a new start here, right? Like two first, you could do a lot with two first rounders, like we were just talking about. The
Hmm.
Cowboys dynasty of the '90s started because they traded away a superstar,
Yep.
and it could be tough right now, but man, I
Yeah.
say stick with that mentality. If it takes
Yeah.
you hating on him for his off the field antics and his
Antics
disagreements with
is
the
a bit mean, I think. I mean, he has a podcast, but he's not getting in trouble. He's not
Yeah,
causing
but I
headaches.
think he means more of the athletic trainer
Yeah.
thing
Yeah, I
that
get you what you're
happened
saying.
towards the end of the season. Uh, I mean,
Speaking of
if
his,
that's what you need to look at in order to feel happy about this trade, that's fine.
yeah.
But I'm telling you, if you're a Raiders fan, you should feel happy. If you're a Ravens fan, you should feel happy too. It goes
And
both
again,
ways. This is a good trade on both sides.
I feel so relatable in this instance because my favorite player of all time, Russell Wilson, was ripped away from me. And I'm telling you, being on the other side of it, I'm so thankful that John Schneider did that. I'm so thankful that they ripped the Band-Aid off. They maximized Russell Wilson's value. They got 2 firsts and picks and players. It sucks. It sucks to be a team that is losing, and you have these great players, and you just know that they're going to be traded one day. But eventually, the draft picks you get in return will amount to something. I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe the 2 players that they took with the Khalil Mack picks were Jonathan Abram and Josh Jacobs. So you got one base hit, right? Jonathan Abram obviously didn't work out, but it wasn't. Um, he said more smoking cigars than lifting weights. That's actually so funny. Uh,
Hey, he was
Tim,
he was still consistently the strongest man on the field.
yeah,
So
I mean, you couldn't see it on the field, man. He's bull rushing guys to put him in hell. Um, I again, I think that if you're a Raiders fan, it sucks. You're probably gonna cry yourself to sleep tonight, as I did all those years ago. But it'll be a good thing for your franchise moving forward. I really do think that. Um, you also again have a ton of cap space now, as somebody else mentioned in our chat earlier. So you could go out and get one of these premier free agents. Um, I wouldn't recommend building your team through free agency as much as the draft, but you can go out and land one of these guys. But this is a league-altering, historical trade for the NFL. This is something that I will tell my great-grandchildren about. No, I'm just kidding. But maybe I will. Who knows? Maybe if he goes on to have another 70, 80 sacks as a Baltimore Raven, I will be telling my grandbabies about this. But the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, maybe we're just victims of the moment. Maybe this is just, us being all amped up. But is it a total and complete utter failure if they're not playing in February next year? Because I think we all can agree that, if as long as the contract stuff with Lamar goes relatively good and there's no drama there like there was a couple years ago, this is probably the premier team in the AFC. So is it an utter and complete disaster if under the first year of Jesse Minter they're not playing in February?
I think that's not reasonable. We talked about it. The contract remains team friendly for multiple years, not just this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see why one would say that the window is so tight, right?
Right.
I
Fair.
think you're looking at like 4 years here. Now, Derrick Henry's an older player. That's the concerning thing.
Yeah.
But there are real flaws with this team still. The
Yeah.
offensive line, I
Their
still have
receiver room
questions
isn't
about the
great.
interior. Yeah. And with Tyler Linderbaum gone, like the interior offensive line is really bad.
Yeah.
Those guards were really bad last year.
I think what set him off last year was Lamar Jackson wasn't Lamar Jackson. He
Yep.
was hurt, and John Harbaugh didn't even know how hurt he was, and it was like a weird situation. And even when he played, he wasn't the Lamar that we know and love. And their defensive line, like we talked about, their leading sack guy had 4.5. You said it's just unacceptable in today's NFL. It was not. You can't. There's a reason that the 49ers and the Bears and some of these other really good offenses didn't, go super far in the playoffs. It's because they had no pass rush. You cannot win in the NFL with no pass rush. You cannot. Absolutely not. And now they have one. Like, now they have a pass rush. So
Yeah.
good on them. Good on the Raiders. I'm struggling to kind of think of this from a pessimistic angle on either side. Again, you mentioned like with Maxx Crosby.
Listen, if
it's like,
anyone would look for pessimism, it would be me.
yeah, I was
And
waiting for you to turn this into an anti-running back rant, but there were no running backs involved, so like I didn't know how you were going to do it. I'm kind of still waiting for you to do that, but yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to spin this in a negative way, but I think that's a fair price for Maxx Crosby. I don't think the Raiders sold low. I don't think the Ravens they overpaid, but you have to for a guy like Maxx Crosby, right? I don't see this in a negative light either way. I think this is kind of like the McDuffie trade a couple days ago, where hey, two different teams in two different spots, two GMs go to the negotiating table, they both walk away better. Like I think that's kind of the narrative out of this one as well.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. It's a good trade on both ends.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking on the Raiders' behalf again, I do want to dive into what their defense is going to look like this year because I think that we might be dealing with a Cincinnati Bengals type situation here. Do you think
No,
that they're
I don't think so. Like, okay, I'll be entirely honest here. That is talking about that at this moment is so much speculation.
it is
Because
it
we don't
is
know
it
what
is
their
yeah
free agency is going to look like.
yeah
We
it's
don't know
true.
what their draft is going to look
That
like.
is true.
Like maybe they bring an Odafe away, and then all of a sudden they have like a kind of replacement type of
Yeah,
thing.
they
Maybe they
still
bring
the
in
Ravens
Jalen
pass
Phillips.
rusher. Yeah.
Who knows, right? I think it's very premature to talk
That is
about
true.
that
That
at
is
this
true. That is
point.
true. That is true. Would
I
it
think
be?
it was a good trade on both ends. It's a blockbuster
Yeah.
in a lot of senses. And I mean, that's what the offseason is about. We're going to
Yep.
just see more and more stuff heading our way throughout
Yeah.
the next
And you
couple
don't
of
you
weeks.
don't
I
get
think
up
this is
Maxx
just the start.
Crosby every year. Like you don't.
No,
You know what I mean?
no, you don't.
I mean, we got
But there's
Sauce
always the
Gardner last year.
blockbuster. I guess
Yeah.
the last real question I would have before we go ahead and wrap this up
hmm
would be, is this the blockbuster of the offseason, or is there something else brewing right now? You
There
think
is
possibly?
only one name that could top this, and that would be I just said topless. Wow. Top this, and that would be Joe Burrow. And
Mhm.
I think there's a better chance that Selena Gomez knocks on my door and wants to go on a date with me tonight than there is that Joe Burrow gets traded. I think it is 0.001%. I understand the Bengals are the Bengals. I understand that the King's ransom. It would be beyond a King's ransom. It would be like an Elon Musk like buys the moon type of ransom. They would get 5 first rounders, the naming rights for the GM's third son. Like it would be just ridiculous. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the Bengals would ever do that. But that would be the only player feasibly, somewhat possible to get traded that could top the Maxx Crosby thing because that would set historical precedent. I truly believe that. But no, we're not going to see anything bigger this offseason in terms of a trade. The only other thing that could maybe top this is if the Raiders traded the first overall pick, if they did like what the Bears did a few years ago with the Carolina Panthers, that would be close, but I don't even know if that would top it because Maxx Crosby, again, every pick is a lottery pick. Maxx Crosby's not. Maxx Crosby's a Hall of Famer in the relative prime of his career who just got traded for a King's ransom. So to answer your question, no, nothing could top this.
Yeah. I mean, AJ Brown, but no, I think Maxx
No.
Crosby's a bigger deal.
They'd have to package deal AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts along with like 20 the naming rights for 20 Jalen Hurts quotes post game and make them like get married for them to top this. Like that wouldn't be even close.
No, I think this is definitely the trade of the offseason, but who knows what story might establish, right?
Who knows?
Who knows? The Cowboys are the Cowboys, so maybe
Yeah.
we see Dak get traded.
And you talk about Jerry Jones' ego. He's probably so mad right now that he doesn't have everybody watching him and looking at him and listening to Dallas radio right now. I mean, he might. I don't know. The creativity of Jerry Jones knows no bounds. So I'll be very interested to see what he does. He might trade back for Micah Parsons, torn ACL and all. Who knows? He'll think of something. I'm sure.
That possible. Anything's possible in Jerry world. I'll say that.
Anything's possible in Jerry world. But all right, guys. So we've talked for 40 minutes about the Maxx Crosby trade. If that doesn't tell you how big it is, I think it's gonna wrap it up. Unless I know we kind of both got our thoughts out about this, kind of trying to attack it from every angle: the Ravens, the Bears, the Raiders, every team that was in the Maxx Crosby sphere, which Albert Breer at one point said was a quarter of the league. Don't doubt that at all. But I think that's pretty much it. We have to rest, we have to recover, and we'll get maybe some more thoughts out in the coming days. But thank you guys for watching. Again, kind of an emergency episode. Had to scramble, get everything together, but thankfully we were both home and we were both kind of ready to go. So that's going to do it, guys. And